Okay, today we are going to talk about Chapter 6. We were supposed to do these in class, but due to the storm, we aren't able to do that. So you could potentially be hearing some tree cutting in the background. That's just remnants of the storm. So we're going to work on problem 6-16 in your cost accounting book. And problem 6-16 says, in 2011, Rouse & Sons, a small environmental testing firm, performed 12,200 radon tests for $290 each and 16,400 lead tests for $240 each. Because newer homes are being built with lead-free pipes, lead testing volume is expected to decrease by 10% next year. However, awareness of the radon-related health hazards is expected to result in a 6% increase in radon testing volume each year in the near future. Jim Rouse feels that if he lowers his price for lead testing to $230 per test, he will only face a 7% decline in lead tests in 2011. Part 1 says prepare a 2012 sales budget for Rouse & Sons, assuming that the Rouse holds prices at the 2011 levels. So the first thing I'm going to do, we're talking about a sales budget in service industry, in service setting. The first thing I'm going to do is write down the information I already know. This is a repeating theme, but once I put this into Excel, the idea is that we'll probably use this information given in the problem. So we have radon testing, radon tests, and we have lead tests. So I'm going to type in our 2011 volume. I'm going to make that one column, 2011 prices. I'm going to make an expected volume change because we're expecting a volume change from year over year, and 2012 expected volume. Now I'm going to highlight these, make these bold, and I'm going to bring these up. So in 2011 it says that they had 12,200 radon tests and 16,400 lead tests. The price per radon test was $290, and the price per lead test was $240. Our expected volume change is a 6% increase, as stated in the problem for 2012 for radon tests, but a 10% decrease. So all I'm going to do is to find out my expected volume for 2012, I'm going to multiply my 2012 volume times 1 plus my expected volume change. So if I put the negative 10%, then that will actually give us a decrease. And then, of course, I'm just going to drag my formula down to repeat it in the following category. I'm also going to set this so there's a comma, just because I like nice formatting. Okay, so if I read this correctly, with a 6% increase in radon testing, we will have 12,932 tests next year for 2012. And with a 10% decrease, we're going to have 14,760 lead tests. So now I'm going to set up an expected sales budget for Rouse & Sons 2012. Expected for year ending December 31st, 2012. All right, let's see what we have going on. So we have radon tests. I'm going to skip one more. Radon tests and lead tests. And we have a selling price category. We have units. And then we have total revenues. I'm also going to format these, make them nice and bold. Okay, so our selling price is, in the first problem, it says, let them remain the same as 2011. So I'm just going to link them to 2011's prices. Then the units sold is our expected volume for 2012. We figured that out above. So I'm going to link them again, hit equals, and I'm going to type this cell. And then my total revenue would be my selling price times my number of units equals my selling price times my number of units. So then I'm going to make a nice little totals category. So my total revenue anticipated for 2012 would be $7,292,680. Part 2 says, prepare a 2012 budget for Rouse & Sons, assuming that Rouse lowers the price of the lead testing. Should he lower the price of the lead testing if his goal is to maximize sales revenue? The price of lead testing. Okay. So, what I'm going to do is I'm just going to take this and copy this below. We're going to set it up again. So it's real easy to copy and paste, but what I'm going to do is, since I typed this all in, I'm just going to change this because he's expecting prices. So I'm going to change this category to 2012 expected prices. And we're going to leave that and we're going to change this to 230. And we're going to change this to minus 7%. Okay, so by copying and pasting and changing the expected prices, we now have a new price and a new volume for 2012. I'm then going to copy and paste my setup. Copy. I'm going to save myself lots of typing time here. You could type it out if you don't want to copy and paste. So my selling price for 2012 is $290 for the radon. That didn't change, but we changed the 2012 expected price for lead to $230. Now our volume, we now figured out, remains the same for radon, and since we changed it to a 7% decrease, it's 15,252 for lead tests. So now to figure out total revenues, we just multiply the sales price by the total number of units. Sales price by the total number of units. Then I'm going to turn around total and do my totals column equals sum, and I'm going to add these two columns together. I'm going to make it bold. Okay, so here's the breakdown. If price levels remain the same as 2011, total revenue equals now, if price level of lead test is reduced to 230 per test, our total revenues is this. If our goal is to maximize total revenue, we would leave price levels the same. Because the amount of volume that we gain, which is really we go from a 10% decrease to a 7% decrease, doesn't necessarily make up in a total revenue, because we actually end up losing $34,440 if we change the price to $230 for the lead tests. So that is not a good choice, and we would leave the prices as 2011 prices, and we would allow for the 10% anticipated decrease in lead volume. So this was problem 6-16. This is a very simple way of setting up a sales budget for a service industry. Now we're going to move on to 6-30. So I'm just going to change the size here so you can see it. Problem 6-30. This is revenue and production budgets. Problem 6-30 says that Scarborough Corporation manufactures and sells two products. Thing 1 and Thing 2. In 2011, Scarborough's projected department gathered the following budgets. Actually, I'm going to have to repost this. My idea was that we would do problem 6-31. So we're actually meant to do 6-31. I will change that in your homework. And this is a budgeted income statement. So 6-31. EaseCom Company is a manufacturer of video conferencing products. Regular units are manufactured to meet marketing projections, and specialized units are made after an order is received. Maintaining the video conferencing equipment is an important area of customer satisfaction. With the recent downturn in the computer industry, video conferencing equipment segment has suffered, leading to a decline in Econ's financial performance. The following income statement shows the results for 2011. So we have company, EaseCom Company, income statement for year ending December 31st, 2011. So what I'm going to do is I'm actually going to set up my income statement just like they did in the book. So we have equipment. So they make revenues from equipment and maintenance contracts. Then they have a total revenues. Then they have costs of goods sold, or COGS. Then they have gross margin. Then they have operating costs. And their operating costs are marketing, distribution, customer maintenance, and administration. Total. And then we have total operating costs. And then we have operating income. Okay. So then I'm going to make a column header for 2011 actual. And this is how I do this in my real job when I do accounting for or budget preparation and estimates for the following budget year. So I'm going to put in the actual revenues from and costs from 2011 as listed. 6,000 for equipment. We had 1,800. our total line equals this line plus this line. And I'm going to draw a line here just so that we know that we have some sort of total and a calculation here. Then we have cost of goods sold of 4,000. And these are in the thousands, I believe. And we need to make sure we put that in the thousands. And then our gross margin equals our total revenues minus our cost of goods sold. So I'm also going to put a line here. Now we're going to go down and list our operating costs. Marketing, 600. 150 for distribution, 1,000 for customer maintenance, and 900 for administration. Our total equals the sum of all of these columns above, all of our costs. I'm also going to put a line above that. And my operating income equals my gross margin minus my operating costs. I'm also going to put the double line here. Top line with a double line underneath. So all I've done it to this point is set up exactly what the book has given me. Then it goes on to say, EaseCom's management team is in the process of preparing the 2012 budget and is studying the following information. So, selling prices of the equipment are expected to increase by 10% as the economy recovery begins. The selling price of each maintenance contract is expected to remain unchanged for 2011. From 2011. So what I'm going to do is they actually have, I'm going to do 2012 assumptions. And I'm going to make two categories because they change multiple things. Assumptions. All right. So far you should have this as your setup, and then I'm going to make a third category as 2012 projections. Okay, so it says that selling prices of the equipment are expected to increase by 10%. So we are going to see a 10% increase here. But it says on this problem that we're going to see a 0% increase on maintenance contracts. So I'm going to leave that there for question number 1. So we're assuming a 10% increase in equipment, 0% in maintenance contract revenue. The other thing that happens with this, we're assuming that our cost of goods sold, we're moving on to problem number 2. Equipment sales is expected to increase by 6% with a corresponding 6% growth in units of maintenance contracts. So we're seeing a 10% increase in the price, and now we're seeing a 6% increase in equipment sales. With a 6% increase, so this is actual sales levels, right? So we're expecting the units to increase here, whereas the first problem we were expecting a 10% increase in the price. So that shouldn't change our volume, it just changed our price. Number 3 says each unit sold is expected to increase by 3% to pay for the necessary technology. So we're having technology changes, so our cost of goods sold is increasing by 3%. But the other thing we need to remember is if we're increasing the volume of equipment, we're also increasing our cost of goods sold. And so I'm going to increase this by 6% to correspond with the 6% increase in equipment that I'm selling. So I'm going to sell 6% more in volume, so therefore I'm going to have 6% more in cost of goods sold. This 3% comes from question number 3. Or information number 3, which tells us that 3% increase is expected because of technology. The next number 4 says that costs are expected to increase by $250,000, but administration costs are expected to remain the same as 2011. So we're expecting a marketing increase. Now remember that these are in the thousands, so I'm then going to change this to 250. And I'm having 0 on admin because we're not having any administration increases. And the reason that I'm writing numbers instead of percentages is because that's the information that we're able to gather here. Distribution costs vary in proportion to the number of equipment sold. So our distribution costs vary. Didn't we have a 6% increase in volume? So I'm going to give a 6% increase to distribution. Six, 2 maintenance technicians were hired at a cost of $130,000, which covers wages and related travel costs. The objective is to improve customer service and shorten response time. So I'm going to add this. This is a cost of maintenance, and I'm going to add 130. Remember, it's 130,000, but we're subtracting 3 zeros because we've condensed this statement, and it's quoted in the thousands. And then there is no beginning or ending inventory in equipment. So that is all of our assumptions that we're going to make based on the information. It says prepare a budgeted income statement for the year ending December 31st, 2012. So I'm going to prepare a budgeted income statement. Well, how am I going to do this? I have to make sure I include all of the assumptions. So I'm going to take my actual. And then it tells me that I'm going to increase my actual by 1 plus 10% because of an increase in price. And I'm also going to increase it by 1 plus my 6% based on an increase in volume. I'm going to format these. So my equipment revenue has gone from $6,000 to $6,996 based on the assumptions that we're going to have a 10% increase in price and a 6% increase in volume. Now I'm going to go to maintenance contracts. I'm going to do this times 1 plus 0% times 1 plus 6%. So this basically has made a 6% increase in maintenance contract due to an increase in volume. This line is going to be a total line. We're going to add these two together. Then we're also expecting increases in cost of goods sold due to a change in technology that's going to cost more, and due to the fact that we're going to sell 6% more units. So I'm going to take my 2011 number and times that by 1 plus my 3% assumption times that by 1 plus my 6% assumption that we're going to have an increase in volume. My new cost of goods sold is $5,022. Now remember, our gross margin is total revenues minus cost of goods sold. I'm going to draw a little line for formatting purposes so that I know that I did some sort of equation here. Now, we're not doing too many percentages down here, so we're going to have to change our formula. We're actually just going to add this. We're going to take this and we're going to add the $250 assumption. I'm then going to take this number and times that by 1. This is a percentage one, so we're going to have 1 plus 6%. This one's going to be adding because we're just adding, and we have a flat value to add to it. And we don't have any increase, but let's add it here. So then this column, my total operating cost, is going to be a total of all these new costs. And then my new operating income is my new gross margin minus my costs. So based on the information from the budget assumptions, we are going to have a new operating income of $8,843, and it's really $843,000 because we're missing 3 zeros here. So that's a good increase considering we're having an economic recovery and sales had been down. So this is based on all of these assumptions. If I was making this budget, I would also go in here and insert myself a comment, and I would say increase price by 10%. And I would go insert comment. Increase volume of sales by 6%. And I would continue to do this for all of these numbers because I might need to go back and reference this budget and say, well, how did I come up with this assumption? Here you see my 10%, my 6%, but you might be saying to yourself, where did this all come from? So when you're in budget information meetings and you're preparing a budget, you want to make sure you know where you got these. So I'm going to insert myself a little comment here and say, no increase in price for maintenance contacts. The other thing to do is, instead of making comments inside your Excel, is to type up a document with budget assumptions. Increase in volume by 6%. Increase in cost due to technology change, 3%. And of course, if we decide, oh, we found out the technology change is going to be 5%, well, I'm just going to go right in here and change that. And as you see, since I link everything, that just changed my operating income down below to $745,000. So I'm just going to reverse that out. But that's why I make these kind of comments, and then I go back in and I also link everything so that Excel does all the work for me after the setup.